Hello, everyone. This is Marie Williams with Router Manufacturing's Tipping Point podcast. This is a podcast for the gas and welding industry, or honestly, any emerging leader. You'll learn a lot from the guests that are on this podcast. In this episode, I interviewed Laura Brumsey of the Compressed Gas Association, also known as the CGA. And in our world where we're transporting high pressure gases like argon, nitrogen, CO2, you name it, this association pretty much controls how we're able to do that. And Laura plays a giant role in going around and talking with leaders of our country and leaders of multi-billion-dollar companies to make sure that we have the right regulations moving forward. So I would say if you're a young professional in our industry that wants to learn more about our industry or wants to learn how to work your way up in the job you're in, even if you're not even in the gas and welding industry, this episode is for you, along with if you're an executive who is managing a team that includes young professionals. This episode really shows ways to motivate them, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. Thanks. Today I'm here with Laura Brumsey, who is Vice President of Operations Administration at the Compressed Gas Association, also known as the CGA. Hello, Laura.
Hi, Marie. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I think outside of our industry, people probably don't know what the CGA is, but it touches a lot of things that in day-to-day use wouldn't happen without the CGA being present, such as CO2 in our beer, helium in our MRI machines, whatever aerospace space is using our products for, which they use a lot. What is the CGA, and can you touch on just how important it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a question we get a lot because Compressed Gas Association doesn't exactly connect always with people. We get a lot of questions about, do you guys work with Exxon? Do you do the propane in my grill? And so the answer is that we're primarily writing safety standards for any gas that comes in a cylinder or a container, and the containers, the valves, the equipment that we use in connection with those gases. So we're a little different than a normal trade association because we're not out doing trade shows and a lot of marketing activities and things like that. Our sole focus is developing and maintaining our library of safety publications. We also have some offshoots around education, so you'll see us do some seminars and webinars, as well as going out to speak at some end user communities. And we do a little bit of advocacy and lobbying and things like that, but around safety and supply issues. So that's really the reason that we're here, the reason that we have the connection with the industry, is to be that liaison in between all the companies to determine what the best safety practices are, to kind of validate those into documents that everybody can use so that across the industry we have an equivalent level of safety, and then to take those industry positions or standards and work those into regulations and codes and things like that. Because the regulators at a lot of the federal agencies and even at the state level may not have specific experience with gases. So it's really important for them to have organizations like CGA to be able to reach to that they trust as a credible safety authority to help them set things that are not only safe but effective for the industry as well. So the high level overview of who we are and what we do.
Right. And I think at some of the association events that I've gone to, there's a lot of new hires that have come in outside of our industry, I think in the first time in probably quite a while. And it's like argon, nitrogen, CO2, helium, any gas, high pressure gas that you can think of, just transporting that from where it's filled to the end user of that gas, whether it's Ratterman or, a supplier from our end or the fill plant that's actually filling that gas and transporting that gas, they are using CGA guidelines that they have to follow and be in compliant of in order for that gas to get where it needs to get to and to be used in a certain way. Because gas, if you're using a high pressure cylinder the wrong way incorrectly, unfortunately, that could lead to a injury or death. With the guidelines you guys have put in place, our industry is a lot safer and the handling of our products are a lot safer. So what do you do at the CGA? Do you mind touching on what a day in a life looks like for you?
Absolutely. So CGA is not this massive organization. A lot of people see the breadth of standards that we put out and things like that and think that we've got 50, 60, 75 people working for us. There are 15 of us. So like any small organization, we all get to wear a lot of hats. So my job is pretty varied from day to day. I serve as the oversight kind of arm for our standards and committees activities. So I have a team that works with me that oversees our 28 technical committees, and those technical committees are the groups that are populated by subject matter experts from our member companies, and they're working to write and maintain our library of standards. So that's a huge part of my job, whether it's looking at work process improvement, how can we get standards to market quicker while maintaining technical accuracy and editorial quality, whether it's working with companies that are trying to address a specific issue, like an example that we're seeing right now, there's a lot of activity in the hydrogen market. So there's a lot of work to coordinate between our committees and our leadership teams to make sure that we're touching the mark on hydrogen and getting safety information out there that people need. I also do a lot with legal. So if we have any sort of legal challenges or anything like that, I get to spend a decent chunk of my day working with the attorneys, always a good time hanging out with the legal staff. But a big part of my job in terms of the legal capacity of what I do is intellectual property protection. A lot of people steal standards and post them in places where they're not supposed to be posted. They'll alter them and things like that. An increasing part of my job over the past 5 years has been figuring out how to deal with that. And then I also have the pleasure of heading up our work with the International Harmonization Council, which is comprised of other associations that are like CGA around the world. So I get to serve as a program manager for that work effort and also for our leadership committee. So in addition to all of our technical committees that are doing the work to develop and maintain our publications, we've got our board of directors, our executive committee, our standards council that are setting the overall strategy and direction for the organization. And I'm the project manager and admin contact for all of those groups. So my normal day, a lot of times, is all over the place. Like I'm jumping from one project to another. I oversee our marketing and communications. And just with kind of the breadth and scope of our industry, one day I'll be working with hydrogen. The next day we're talking about CO2. We've been having a lot of conversations about helium lately. So I get to touch lots of different pieces of the industry and learn about a lot of different things. It's really a lot of fun. No 2 days are the same. And it's a job that I think is probably different than I would find anywhere else.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Also, when you say a lot of people think that there's 50 employees at the CGA, I think of you guys similar to the FDA or like some big government. So I am guilty of that, of thinking that you guys have a huge staff there until you had explained that to me previously, and was pretty blown away at the scope of work that you all do. Anyways, Laura, how did you get into this? Like
Yeah,
this
so that's a really great question. Yeah, nobody like on kindergarten career day, no 5-year-old is standing up there going, I want to be a standards developer when I grow up, right? So I went to grad school for a pretty similar role. And it's one of those things where I went to grad school and never really thought I would use my grad degree. So I had my academic background is in consumer protection. And I did it because I liked it. And I thought I was going to go work for the government after I graduated. And then I finished my master's degree in 2008 when the economy was collapsing. And the government agency that I was supposed to go work for had a hiring freeze. And so it was like, okay, go find something. And so I literally just found a random job ad. The CGA was hiring. It was in the area that I wanted to be in quickly. And so I thought, okay, this seems semi-close to what I went to school for. I'll give it a go. And to be 100% transparent, I thought it was going to be for a year or two before the government process started up again, and I was able to go over to the government agency that I planned to work for. And it's been almost 15 years now. So sometimes those temporary plans become permanent. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. We always say at Ratterman, this industry it's so technical and so niche that I feel like 1 year in this industry is like 3 years somewhere else. It's an industry you can grow in very quickly, because once you understand what's actually going on and how things are used, you can really propel yourself in a new direction. That's great. I'm glad you're in this industry because you've been making a lot of changes. And what has been the most impactful learning experience for you in your career?
Yeah, so I got I'll say lucky pretty early on. There was an organizational shift at CGA, and I got thrown into our leadership committees, the board level, the executive committee level, and getting that early exposure. I mean, remember at this point, I'm fresh out of college. I was 22, 23 years old when this happened. Getting that early exposure to board level leaders. And even at that point in my career, I was literally the person like getting coffee and taking notes and stuff like that. getting to listen to those conversations, hear how the decisions that were guiding the organization were being made, increasingly having a seat at the table and occasionally getting called on to answer a question and things like that were really transformative for how I was approaching my decision making, how I learned to explain things when I needed support for a new program or for an idea. And it really, I think, has had just a huge impact on my career. And because I was in that room, I got to know people who put me into contacts with organizations like GATA, the Gases and Welding Distributors Association, and put me in rooms like the International Harmonization Council with our partners overseas. And it was really those contacts that got me to the exposure and the experience that I needed to be able to come up in the organization.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you read any leadership book or I don't know, anything around that, they talk a lot about listening is key and listening is 90% of having a good conversation and becoming a good leader. And so it's really neat that you took that on your own and have implied it. But at the same time, I'm just thinking like they had to have seen value in you, right? You can't only just listen for somebody to see the value that you're bringing. Was it scary the first few times you were speaking up and asserting your ideas?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those first several years of meetings where I was like getting an increase, you started with just like a, hey, can you answer this one question? And then please, that's all we need to hear from you, to, okay, you have this very specific topic to present on. But it absolutely was intimidating to start to have a voice at that table and not just be there in listening mode. And I think I was really fortunate at that point in my career. I had really great mentors in place. Mike Tiller, who was the president of the organization at the time, and Rich Craig, who is still with us and is the VP on the technical side, really coached me through some of those early moments and gave me questions to anticipate and prepare for. And it does, I think it makes a big difference too when you have that kind of support in the room with you. You're not going in feeling like you're on your own. You have good backup in place, people who are going to support you if you get tossed a question that you're not quite ready to answer or something like that. And so, yeah, those first few years, and honestly, even still sometimes, so those meetings give me butterflies.
Yeah, no, I'm sure those are huge meetings to go into. And has it impacted you as a leader where you're finding yourself bringing in people and helping to mentor them a little bit the same way that you got that?
It definitely, it really is important to me that I think there are people that are important to have in your network. And it's something that I've actually spent a lot of time talking about with a lot of different people the last couple of years. We all spend time like kind of building our network within the industry, but it's really important to find people that can help lift you to wherever the next space is for you. And not everybody has the willingness or the capacity to be able to do that. And so I've tried to become really intentional about how can I create the space that was made for me for other people? How can I bring other people into the conversation? And I think something that's been challenging for me, I'm a really like type A, want to do it myself kind of person. And I think I had convinced myself for a long time that I was doing other people a favor by not passing on other projects and just doing it myself. And in a way, I was limiting their opportunities to have that same space at the table that I did. And so, so I did try and get a lot more conscious about backing away and giving people the same kind of autonomy and opportunities that I had.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, it is really hard to let go of the reins and pass that on to someone else. I recently have gone through that and it takes so much work off of you. And then you can fill that space with other great ideas. And then too, it's just really fun to see another person's take on how to get that job done or solve those problems. Normally it brings some good ideas to the table. Okay, so what has been your most favorite part of your job?
I really enjoy working with the variety of people that I get to work with. I love going across the industry to the different segments. I love coming to the GATA annual meeting, going out to the International Harmonization Council groups, because everybody's got just such a unique perspective. It's just really interesting to get to meet everybody that's involved in our industry. Because you said it earlier, Marie, you can literally go from like beer to cannabis to medical and meet people that are involved in all of those different sectors. And so it's been a lot of fun for me. I didn't have a background in the industry. I don't have a technical background. So the more I can get out and meet people and talk to people, it gives me lets me connect the dots a little bit more about our
Yeah.
industry and really helps. And yeah, I just enjoy, like, everybody in this industry is so kind and supportive. Like, it really does feel like a big family a lot of times when we're out there. And so those are the times that I enjoy. A lot of my job is back at the home office and everything. So when I can get out and really connect face to face with people, those are my favorite days on the job.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. That's the best part about our industry, I think, is how diverse it is in applications and people's point of views dealing with those different applications. Okay, so you work with people that are head of corporations that are literally worth billions of dollars. Those people definitely have a large influence on how our world operates and our country operates. Can you talk a little bit about why you're working with them and what you work
Yes.
with them on?
Yeah, so CGA, at the end of the day, we're a member organization. And so we have to be responsive to our members' priorities, how their needs are changing. And we're working with people on our board, our executive committee, and even on the technical side at our standards council to decide what are the priorities for CGA? What's our strategic direction for the next 3 to 5 years? And while we all at CGA staff have some input and some influence on that, ultimately that direction comes from our member companies. So that's why we're working with them and making sure that we're presenting the needs that we're hearing from different segments of the industry to those groups. And I think it's become really important and something that I feel like I've learned a lot in the last few years. For a long time, we talked about projects in terms of that specific project's need and value. And I think an important lesson that I've learned the last few years is you've really got to take a holistic approach to presenting not just why is this issue important, but why is it important to the individuals involved? Why is it important to the member companies? And specifically, how is it going to impact their businesses and bring value to their businesses? And how is it going to impact the industry and CGA overall? And when we can do a really good job of presenting those three facets, it makes an easy case for support a lot of times when we need to start a new program or get resources for a new topic that we're looking to work on. And we have a great relationship with our board of directors, and they're really honest about feedback with us. And it really has, I think, driven CGA in a strong direction, especially the last few years as we've come through the pandemic, to start shifting the way we think about and respond to some of the public facing issues that our industry is involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. So as an individual, you have to go talk with the very head of these very large, very powerful companies. It's not just the leaders at these companies that are worth billions of dollars. You're going to the very top to get them to join your new initiatives that the CGA is trying to implement. How do you assert yourself, and what is that self-talk you give yourself or that game plan you have to get them on the same page?
Yeah, sure. So I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody who knows me here. I'm a data nerd. So I'm coming at you with mountains of spreadsheets and data explaining why this is important and what the impact it's going to have, what the resource needs are. And so I do think for me, that's what makes me comfortable going in front of people with a big ask, is that like I've researched it like 16 different ways. I feel like I have every possible answer that somebody could ask a question to. But going back to the question that we just talked about a minute ago, I think it gets really important. Like I had a tendency for a long time to get really tunnel visioned and like, why is this project important to me? Why do I need support on it? And I think it really does help to flip the question around. Why do they need to support it? Why is it important to them and their businesses and their companies? And just reframing how I'm asking that question in my own head, I think has made me a better presenter in those circumstances, and really does force you to think through not just the immediate need for whatever this thing is, but I like our Young and Emerging Professionals program is a really good example. We talked about committee succession and the fact that CGA was going to be losing a lot of knowledge as people retire and transition out of the industry. We talked about the need for CGA to have continuity of subject matter experts on our committees, and that we needed to keep our committees populated to keep doing the work we're doing. And then we started to talk about, years into this message, the importance that it could the difference that it can make for our companies. If you are giving young people a place to come and connect within the industry and build relationships, they're more likely to stay with you as an organization. They're going to build skills and leadership and meeting management skills and presentation skills that are valuable to you as a company. They're going to meet potential customers that might be important to you down the line. They're going to build relationships with people that are going to be future decision makers in their organizations. And all of a sudden that became the important part. And so it was a transition in the way we talked about it and the way I thought about that program. But that was my light bulb moment of, I'm asking myself the wrong question here. It's not really why is it important to CGA, it's why is it important to them.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I know from like Ratterman's standpoint, Jake and I are on the marketing team and business development and stuff. And it's so hard to stay out of getting tunnel vision sometimes, because you can have all these fun ideas and it's like, wait a second, this is helping us, but is this helping my customers? Are they getting what they need from this? Okay. So the preparedness that you put into these type of meetings, I think if I thought of myself going into one of these meetings, I know I'd for sure have imposter syndrome of, oh my gosh, this person's time is way worth more than my time and all of this stuff. But if I prepared myself, I would feel, okay, I'm bringing the value that I need to bring. Let's say you get shut down. What is that self-talk afterwards that you give yourself or the CGA as a group? Do you regroup? What is that?
It kind of depends on the situation. I've definitely had, again, young and emerging professionals comes to mind. That didn't get traction for years. That wasn't like a one-time ask. That was basically 8 years of kind of reporting, talking about it, almost figuring out what the ask was. And so sometimes when it's something that we know, like you go away and you know, like this is still an issue that needs to be addressed, needs to be fixed, it's figuring out how to come at it from a different angle. And I'm 100% guilty. I'm always going to take that path first. What's the other angle I can try at this from?
Absolutely.
And sometimes yeah, and other times it truly is just a resource decision of, okay, that was something that I felt strongly about, that I felt was important, but it's not a priority for the industry right now. And with the resources we have as an organization, with the resources our members have, we're going to choose to go in a different direction right now. It is, it's hard to get that no sometimes, but I want to give a lot of credit to our board of directors. They're number one, they're really good about saying no and why. Our board is not one that just says no further discussion.
Yeah.
So you leave the meeting understanding why that decision was made. And that helps a lot to not just get shot down and not know why.
Yeah. And also, if it's something that you passionately, if you really believe is going to help, you can then regroup and reapproach with understanding where that no came from and reorganize yourself to make it a little bit more appealing. I will say that my job at Ratterman has always been to be part of the creative team, which I would invest a lot of time creating these new ideas of either marketing stuff or culture stuff or whatever the case may be. And sometimes they would get shut down. I'd feel so passionately about it that I would just feel destroyed over it and I would lose sleep over it. And it's funny because now that I've been working there for almost 8 years, I've seen the transition where it's not just like an immediate no. It's like it's a no. They always give the explanation of why. And in the beginning, used to always say, be patient, but I'd want everything to be done then. And if it was a no, then that meant it was never going to happen. But now that I've been there longer, I've seen where they've implemented those ideas at the time that it actually makes sense. So talking about new ideas, where do you see the future of the gas and welding industry going? What does that look like to you?
I'm excited about where we are right now because I think we're getting ready to go through a period of massive innovation again. You look back through the history books of the industry and you had a big cycle of innovation when cryogenic gases became a possibility and people could liquefy. You had a big stream of innovation when the space program took off, literally. Jerry Samus is going to be proud of that pun. And I think you're about to see that again now with the focus on alternative fuels, because our industry is going to play such a big role between hydrogen and natural gas, some of the other fuels that are out there, and whether segments of our industry are going to play an auxiliary role to that or be directly involved. I think we're about to see a period where our industry is really going to rethink not only what we're doing in those immediate sectors of the alternative fuels and things like that, but how do we as an industry get greener and cleaner about how we're producing the materials we produce, how we're transporting them around the country. And so I'm really excited to see the level of innovation that we've got a sneak peek into. And I know for this industry that safety is going to continue to be at the forefront of those conversations. It's always stunning to me. I go back and look at the mission statement that was crafted for CGA back in 1913, and it like still holds up today. It's still what our industry is focused on. We've made like a couple of little word changes here and there, and the same basic premise is still the same. So I know that as we get down this path of innovation, that there's going to be that focus there still. But I think we're like on the tipping point of this major change for the industry and headed in a lot of new directions and applications in that energy space in particular.
Totally. And also circling back to the whole safety thing, like that safety will always be, I think, number one in our industry. It has to be, right? But the nice thing is there's new technology coming out where it's easier to get those safety guidelines into the hands of the people that are handling the gases or whatever it may be. So excited, like you're saying, to see where all of this goes. And I think you guys have just done such a great job. I know when I first started at Ratterman until now, like going on the CGA website, it's a whole new refresh now. It's very user friendly. And also that's a great segue into the resources at CGA. So what resources do you offer for a young professional that's trying to learn more, or just anyone in general in our industry?
No, thank you. We've worked hard to bring the website up into the current century with technology. It's a hard moving target to hit. But as far as resources, so we've got our library of safety standards, and the way people describe our safety standards a lot of times is by engineers for engineers. So we've got this library of about 350 technical publications that are pretty dense. So for somebody that's looking for that kind of really specific safety information, that's a massive resource all on its own. But for young professionals that are just getting started in the industry, or somebody who's new to working with our products and our equipment, we've started over the past few years trying to develop materials that are more effective in communicating with somebody that's never seen a cylinder before, never operated a valve. So we have, under the education section on our website, we've got e-learning modules, which are self-paced and interactive, and I can take them and understand what they mean. I'm coming from a person without a technical background in the industry. I'm always like the test guinea pig. We have safety posters that are designed for end user applications. So if somebody's got customers in the cannabis space, the brew space, medical oxygen, we've got a growing series of posters that are designed to be able to hand over to customers in those applications that are just really high level basic safety information that are also a great resource for somebody who's new. And then the other piece of getting it to somewhere like CGA is not just like, where do I find the technical information for my job, but what is CGA? How do I get involved? Where do I fit in this puzzle? And so we have our Young and Emerging Professionals Committee, which is a great place to stick your toes in the water, meet some people, get oriented to CGA. We've also got in our training section on our website, our education section on our website, we have member training videos that are just like really basic, like committee meeting 101, what is antitrust policy, because that's something that's really important when we're writing standards, and just really basic like explainer videos for somebody that's new and has never sat through a committee meeting before and isn't sure what to expect from an organization like CGA. So there's the technical resources, but also the how to be a CGA member resources.
Yeah, no, we've had some new hires from outside of our industry recently, and I have guided them right over to the CGA resources. It's phenomenal what you guys have done, and that's a lot of work. So thank you for doing that for our. And speaking of young professionals, do you have advice for a young professional that you would like to give?
I do, and I think it's a good circle back to the first part of what we were talking about. It's make space for yourself at the tables you want to be at. So if you're eyeing going into a leadership position or something like that, find a way to that table, even if it means offering to be that note taker for a year or so. Getting in that room and getting to get to know those people, have conversations with them during the breaks, and gradually become a part of the active discussion is, for me, the most valuable thing that happened in my career, and I was fortunate in that space got created for me in that instance. But I've seen a lot of people, and I've done it myself, where you can't wait for somebody to do that for you. Like, you've got to make the ask. And a lot of times, as soon as you show that interest of like, how can I be involved in this project or this program or in this decision-making group, people are willing to like work with you to find that pathway. They just need to know that you're interested and that's something that you're willing to take on the extra to do.
That's phenomenal advice. Thank you for that. And is there what shift or change would you like to see in our industry or the future of business?
Yeah, so I think COVID really crystallized this for me. Our industry has a lot of opportunity to talk more about the impact that we have on virtually every sector of the economy in our country. And COVID was the first time that I think a lot of people understood what compressed gases were, because all of a sudden here, medical oxygen was the most important part of it. And we're having a lot of that same conversation now around CO2, because there are all these efforts to work on reducing CO2, and that's all needed for the environment and everything. CO2 also is a really essential part of a lot of different businesses that we enjoy, medical procedures, food processing, agriculture. And I think for a long time, we've had this perspective of if we're quiet, it's almost like the principal not knowing your kid's name at school. If nobody knows who we are, it's actually a good thing. And I think we're in a time now where we need to be more actively telling the story of what our industry does, why specific gases are important. As especially some of these issues around carbon dioxide and helium, hydrogen come more closely in contact with the public, it's going to be important for them to understand what exactly that impact is. And so I think that's a big shift that I see coming for us in the future, and something that I hope to see the industry taking on more of, is that storytelling role and really driving home. I don't think most people realize just how many products our industry touches. Yeah,
I say all the time, like when I try and explain it to friends, it can be so frustrating to try and explain our industry, first of all, because like, where do you start? But I say basically, whatever you do during a day, you're probably touching at least 10 things. If you're walking into a Target, the iron workers that helped to build that Target are using some of our products. If you're buying a new cell phone at that Target, the chips that are in that cell phone, our industry helped to create. If you're going to go get a beverage at that Target, the CO2 that's in that beverage, our industry helped to do. And it can go on and on. And I couldn't agree more. I was really proud to see Rich, who is part of the CGA, was interviewed several times with get the vaccine rollout. They're like, how do we ship these vaccines around the world? And our industry, like very important family-owned and wonderful family-owned companies from our industry came forward and said, we're going to help you with supplying the dry ice. And those vaccines wouldn't be able to get around the country if it wasn't for them. So it's definitely a very valuable industry that they say is recession-proof, and we can provide a lot of great opportunities for people who are looking for a long-term career. I think if you go to any of the association meetings and ask people how long they've been in the industry, typically it's, forever. They're like, I got in, I thought I was going to be in it for a year or two, and now it's been 45 years. It's, oh my gosh, you should be retired. Why are you here? But
keep adding 10-year milestones for recognition. Like, we started out with 10, 20, 30, and then it was like, oh, we've got to add a 40. We have our first 50-year milestone coming up this year. It's incredible. Yeah.
It really is. And our industry it's a legacy industry. And so people have been in it for a really long time, but there's also an opportunity to bring in those new, fresh perspectives and really connect the public with what we're doing and just how much we are a part of the economy, like you're saying. Great insight there. Okay. And then, is there a space for companies to do better? And if so, what about?
I think it's something that our companies already do really well, is focus on safety. I think something that we're seeing as these applications get closer and closer to end users is making sure that we're bringing safety to the conversation in new venues. So like this year, I have a really hard job sometimes, but I had to go to the Craft Brew America conference and talk to all the craft brewers about carbon dioxide safety. Their samples were a little better than the ones at our annual meeting. I'll give them that. They have a whole brew hall. But I was the only speaker, I think, the entire week that talked about CO2 from a safety perspective.
Wow.
And I think there are lots of opportunities to get in front of the brewers groups, the cannabis growers groups, the agriculture groups, these new hydrogen venues that are popping up, and make sure that we're making safety part of that conversation. And I think that's important. We want people to be thinking about safety. We want people to be operating safely, because any incident that happens has the potential to have unintended ramifications on our industry. If somebody goes out there and is acting like it's the Wild West and doesn't know about some of the safety considerations, anything that they do is going to have impact on regulatory and code requirements and things like that. But I think it's also a really good opportunity for our industry to demonstrate how we can bring value to customers. If we're talking about safety and be able to provide that expertise, there's definitely an appetite for that out there. And I think that's the next space that I would really like to see, is not only are we going to these types of conferences and external venues from a business development perspective, but also how can we carry forward that safety message in those spaces too.
Absolutely. I think too, the other side of that is if people are talking about safety nonstop and that's just like the norm, right? And it doesn't feel like some big taboo heavy weight, it's going to prevent the negative space that could be there potentially, say around hydrogen, where people have these false ideas of what could happen and they don't really know and they're too afraid to find out. So they just shy away from it and don't really want to engage with that part of the industry. So I think, just think safety should always be number one. And it also has the opportunity of adding that value to the end user of a gas supplier, showing just how much effort they're putting into their safety, and then also allowing for people to get more involved in our industry. Very much agree with that. Okay. And then my last question for you. You are a member of Ratterman's Women's Roundtable group. What advice do you have for females in the workforce?
Yeah, and I have to say, thank you for that group. That's such an amazing space to come to and share ideas and things like that. You all do a phenomenal job with that, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you.
I think the important part for really anyone in business, but I do think it's especially important for women in business, is to find your network. I'm pretty introverted, and so for a long time, I skipped out on networking events and all that stuff. And it's once I got more open to it and got a little more consistent about trying to build a network and going to networking events and getting to know people, it's done so much for me personally. There are business relationships that have developed out of that, and that's been great. But I have this great group of people now that I can call if I'm having an issue or want to work through something. And I think as part of that, again, it's understanding who in that network you can poke at when you need that lift to whatever that next space is that you want to get involved in. And it's just good to have that kind of sounding board. And so I think for anybody who's new to the industry, look for that space, whatever that is, whether it's the women's networking table, whether it's some sort of engineering affinity group, if it's the Young Professionals Committee at CGA or at GATA, but build that life raft of people that are going to float with you through the industry. Because like you said, Marie, everybody stays here for 40 or 50 years, so you might as well get to know some people along the way.
Very true. I love it. Yes. Couldn't agree more. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Anything I missed?
Not from my perspective. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat today. This is a lot of fun, and I'm again just incredibly grateful for the work that you do. Because I know you and your sister do so much to support the women's group and really to create those spaces for people. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. It was so nice connecting with you. Thanks for giving us a whole hour today.
Yeah, this was great.